Hello, bookworm people! Today is a very, 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 very important or interesting chapter of A Tale of Magic, so you wouldn't want to miss it. Let's get started. Tale of Magic, Chapter 17, The In-Between. Shortly before cooking dinner, Mrs. V entered the dining room to set the table and was surprised to find the students and apprentices gathered there. The children had already set the table with bowls and silverware, and a steaming pot of stew had already been prepared. "Surprise!" the children told the housekeeper in unison. "What's all this?" Mrs. V asked. "If it can't be my birthday, because I stopped having those after 50. Ha ha!" "We wanted to do something special for you, Mrs. V," Bristol said. "You work so hard cooking and cleaning for us every day. So as a token of our appreciation, we thought it'd be nice to make you dinner for once." Mrs. V placed a hand over her heart. "Well, that's just so thoughtful of you," the housekeeper said. "You know, I don't care what my generation says about young people. You are not a bunch of lazy, selfish, and entitled attention seekers. Some of you are just downright pleasant. Ha ha!" Xanthus pulled out a chair for Mrs. V. Emeralda tucked a napkin into his shirt. Skylene filled her glass with water, and Tangerina handed her a spoon. Lucy opened the lid of the pot, letting a scrumptious aroma fill the air, and Bristol poured a generous serving of stew into the housekeeper's bowl. "That smells heavenly," Mrs. V said. "What did you make?" "My mother's creamy mushroom and potato stew," Bristol said. "It's an old Evergreen family recipe. I hope you like it." The housekeeper excitedly moved her spoon like it was a swimming fish, and eagerly took her first bite. "It's absolutely delicious," Mrs. V said. "A little salty, but delicious nonetheless. Thank you so much for treating me to such a special meal. I can't tell you how wonderful it feels to be so loved and appreciated by you. I don't want to get too mushy, but sometimes I think of you as my own children. Boy, that's salty. I'll be bloated. I won't fit my shoes tomorrow. Ha ha! But all jokes aside, this is honestly the nicest thing anyone's ever—" Bam! Mrs. V's head fell into her bowl and splashed the whole room with stew. "That was quick," Lucy said. "I thought it would take longer than that." Tangerina carefully raised the housekeeper's head out of the bowl and gently set it down on the table. She held a clean spoon under Mrs. V's nostrils to make sure she was still breathing, but the housekeeper didn't exhale. "Skylene, how much simple slumber sleeping salt did you put in the stew?" she asked. "I just followed the instructions on the back," Skylene said, and removed the bottle of simple slumber sleeping salt from her pocket. "The directions say an inch of salt will put someone to sleep for a week." Tangerina snatched the bottle from her friend and took a look for herself. As she inspected it, something didn't seem right, and she wiped the bottle with a napkin. "Skylene," Tangerina exclaimed, "the instructions say a pinch of salt will put someone asleep for a week, not an inch." Skylene went pale and her eyes grew wide. "Oops," she said. "Oh my God, we've just killed Mrs. V!" Xanthus cried. "Everyone calm down," Bristol said. "We found the simple slumber sleeping salt in Madame Weatherbury's potion cabinet. If it was lethal, I doubt she'd keep it in her office." To everyone's extreme relief, the unconscious housekeeper let out a loud snore and started breathing normally. "The old girl will be out for a while, but she'll be fine," Lucy said, and patted Mrs. V on the back. "Did we do the right thing?" Emeralda said. "It feels weird putting her to sleep like this." We talked about this, Bristol said. If Mrs. V woke up tomorrow morning and discovered we were all missing, it would give her a heart attack. If she found out we were traveling to the Northern Kingdom, she would have come after us. Letting her rest while we're gone is better than letting her worry. Now let's put her in her room and leave before the Snow Queen gets stronger. It took all 6 children to lift Mrs. V's unconscious body from the chair and transport her out of the dining room. She was much heavier than they expected, and it required all their strength. They carried her through the kitchen and into her bedroom as carefully as possible, and did their best to avoid bumping her head and limbs in the doorways. By the time they plopped her down on her bed and tucked her in, the students were all sweaty and out of breath. Wait a second, Lucy said. Why didn't we just use magic to transport her? The classmates groaned at their own collective stupidity. Aw, man, Zingha said. I keep forgetting that's an option. Before they ventured to the Northern Kingdom, each of the students and apprentices manifested a unique coat to keep themselves warm for the journey. Bristol waved her wand, and a sparkling blue coat with fuzzy white cuffs appeared around her pantsuit. Esmeralda created a beaded emerald wrap that matched her beaded emerald robe. Tangerina gave herself a thick jacket from quilted patches of honeycomb. Skylene covered her body in a layer of warm water that wrapped around her like a transparent jumpsuit. And finally, Lucy snapped her fingers and manifested a coat made from dark turkey feathers. Not exactly the pheasant I was hoping for, but it'll do, Lucy said. Sanctus, don't you need a coat? Skylene asked. I should be fine, he said. I'm never cold. Then we're almost ready, Bristol said. I just need to collect a couple things before we go. Bristol packed a sack of food with water and other supplies, and then shrank it to the size of a coin purse so it would be easy to carry during their trip. She borrowed one of Mrs. V's sharp knives from the kitchen and took it to Madame Weatherbury's office. She stood on a glass chair and cut out the Northern Kingdom from the enlarged map of magic on the wall. Bristol was glad to see Madame Weatherbury's star was still shining on the map, and hoped they would save her before it disappeared. She rolled up the extracted piece of the map and tucked it into her coat. Before heading downstairs, Bristol made a quick stop in her bedroom. She retrieved a large geography book from her shelves and contained detailed maps of the in-between and the Northern Kingdom. Bristol waved her wand and shrunk the book to the dimensions of a matchbox so she could carry it in her pockets. Once the map and geography book were collected, Bristol met her classmates downstairs by the front door. Well, this is it, she said. What we're about to embark on may get dangerous, it may get scary, and we may get hurt in the process. We'll call that a Saturday in show business, Lucy said. I'm being serious, Bristol said. Once we walk out that door and leave the academy, there's no turning back. We all know what we're getting ourselves into, right? Bristol looked closely into each of their classmates' eyes to make sure they understood the stakes. Instead of finding any hesitation, she saw the students and apprentices nodding at her with confidence, knowing exactly what they had signed up for. I'm willing to throw a few punches for Madame Weatherbury, Esmeralda said. So am I, Zingha said. Me too, Tangerina said. Me three, Skylene said. Sounds exactly like the thrill I've been looking for, Lucy said. Bristol was energized by her classmates' enthusiasm, but she still let out an anxious sigh before opening the front door. All right, then, she said. Here goes nothing. The children left the castle and hurried through the property to the hedge barrier. As the barrier opened for them, Bristol and her classmates all took a deep breath and squeezed one another's hands for courage. They walked through the barrier's leafy tunnel and took their first steps into the in-between. And their journey began. It was only dusk when Bristol and her friends departed the academy, but it was as dark as midnight in the thick forest. Regardless of their new self-defense skills, the students and apprentices were intimidated by the creepy woods. Every screeching raven and hooting owl seemed like a warning to turn around, but the classmates persisted and traveled down the winding path. Bristol waved her wand and illuminated the forest with twinkling lights that followed them through the in-between like a swarm of fireflies. The classmates made it through their first mile without any trouble, but that quickly changed as they reached the end of their second mile. Suddenly, an enormous horned creature stepped out from the crooked trees and blocked the path. As it approached their twinkling lights, Bristol and Lucy were relieved to see it was Hortense and his three-headed horse. But their friends screamed at the knight and prepared themselves to fight him. "Don't be afraid," Lucy told them. "This guy is a friend." "Of course Lucy's friends with a demonic knight," Tangerina exclaimed. "Color me not surprised." "No, I mean he's not going to hurt us," Lucy said. "He's the one who saved me and Bristol from the witch hunters." The classmates relaxed a little bit after hearing this, but only slightly. Bristol stepped forward to greet the strange entity. "Hello, Hortense," she said. "What are you doing here?" Instead of a verbal response, the knight pointed to the path behind the students, for reasons she couldn't explain. Bristol didn't need words to understand what Hortense was trying to communicate. "I know the woods are dangerous, but we can't go back," Bristol said. "Madame Leatherberry is in trouble, and she needs our help. She's battling a horrible witch known as the Snow Queen. If we don't make it to the Northern Kingdom and save her, she might die." "How does she know what he's saying?" Emeralda whispered to Lucy. "They've got a weird thing," Lucy whispered back. "Just go with it." After a few moments of silence, Hortense bowed to Bristol and gestured to the path ahead of them. Once again, the knight didn't utter a single word, but Bristol knew exactly what he was saying. "Thank you," Bristol said. "That would be wonderful." Bristol," Lucy asked, "what's happening here?" "Hortense is going to escort us through the forest," Bristol said. "He wants to protect us from the other creatures in between." The knight steered his three-headed horse down the path, and the children followed him. Bristol walked beside Hortense as they traveled, but the rest of the group kept their distance. She couldn't blame her friends for being timid. She was scared the first time she saw Hortense, too, but the farther they traveled, the more trusting of him they became. "So what is Hortense?" Emeralda asked. "Is he a man? A soldier? A deer?" "I suppose he's more a spirit than anything else," Bristol continued. "Madame Leatherberry told me Hortense was in love with a witch who used to own a bunch of land around here, including the Academy's property. After Hortense was murdered, the witch used witchcraft to bring him back to life. The spell was so dark and vile, the witch died in the process, and Hortense returned to Earth as an unnatural version of himself. Madame Leatherberry says he now roams the witch's former land and acts as a guardian angel for people in danger." "If that's Bristol's version of a guardian angel, I never want to see her version of a demon," Tangerina whispered to Skyline. Hey, Hortense," Lucy called to him. "Can we call you Horns for short?" The knight slowly shook his head, and everyone understood the message that time. Bristol and her friends followed Hortense through the night and into the following morning. They could have sworn they saw wolves and bears watching them through the trees, but the animals didn't dare approach the children while they were with the knight. Eventually, the path came to a stream, and the students and apprentices crossed a small stone bridge. Bristol and her classmates made it across the bridge without any trouble, but when they turned back, Hortense had stayed on the other side. "What are you doing, Hortense?" Bristol asked. "Aren't you coming with us?" The knight slowly shook his head and pointed to a tree on his side of the stream. Bristol looked closer and saw it was a heart with 2 sets of initials carved into the tree trunk. So, as you can see, well, you can see now, that's the heart on the tree with the initials HM and SW. Wonder who those could be. At first, Bristol had no idea why Hortense was showing her the carving, or who HM and SW were. However, it didn't take her long to remember the knight's life story, and she quickly realized why he had stopped at the stream. "Those are yours and the witch's initials, aren't they?" Bristol said. "You must have carved them into that tree when you were both alive, and you can't travel beyond it, because it marks the end of her former property." Hortense slowly nodded. The knight then performed a series of gestures that Bristol found confusing. First, he pointed in the direction she and the others were traveling. Then he pointed with the same hand. He showed Bristol 2 of his fingers and then reduced them to 1. He repeated the motion several times, pointing 2 fingers, 1 finger, pointing 2 fingers, 1 finger, pointing 2 fingers, 1 finger, pointing 2 fingers, 1 finger. But no matter how many times he performed the gesture, Bristol couldn't figure out what Hortense was trying to say. "The distance? 2 fingers, 1 finger?" she asked, as he reenacted the movement. "The distance? 2 fingers, 1 finger?" For whatever reason, the connection between them had broken, and they couldn't communicate as easily as before. Bristol wondered if it was because she was standing on the other side of the stream. Before she could cross the bridge and get a clearer answer, Hortense pulled on his horse reins and disappeared into the trees. "What was he telling you?" Lucy asked. "Actually, I have no idea," Bristol said, "but I think it was a warning." As the morning became the afternoon, Bristol and her friends' bodies were aching from exhaustion, and their feet were swollen and pounding in their shoes. They had been traveling for almost an entire day and had rarely stopped to take a break. Without Hortense's protection, Bristol was afraid if they lingered anywhere for too long, their scents and sounds would be noticed by a predator. So she made her classmates push through their fatigue and force their procession forward. "How much longer until we get to the Northern Kingdom?" Xanthus asked. "According to my geography book, we're about a quarter of the way there," Bristol said. "Only a quarter?" Scalene said in shock. "I thought we were nearly there. The air has been getting so much colder." "It's about to get a lot colder than this," Bristol said. "Trust me, you'll know when we arrive. The Northern Kingdom is covered in the Snow Queen's blizzards." "What part of the Northern Kingdom are we heading to?" Lucy asked. Bristol removed the map of magic from her coat and unrolled it for her classmates. The map showed Madame Leatherberry is somewhere between Appleton Village and the kingdom's capital, Tinsel Heights. Bristol said, "The Snow Queen recently attacked Tinsel Heights, so I imagine Madame Leatherberry is trying to keep her destruction from spreading. If the Snow Queen reaches Appleton Village, the Northern Kingdom is doomed." Their mutual fear fueled their efforts, and the classmates continued on without complaining. A few more miles down the path, Bristol and her friends passed through a pleasant clearing with sunlight, a stone bench to sit on, colorful berries to eat, and a fresh spring to drink from. It was unlike anything that I had seen in the in-between since leaving the academy, and the apprentices were tempted to stop. "I'm sorry, but I've got to take a break," Tangerina whined. "Me too," Skyline said. "Even I feel dehydrated." Bristol had been pushing her classmates so hard she figured they had earned a quick rest. She didn't object when Tangerina and Skyline left the path and headed for the stone bench. Lucy eyed the clearing suspiciously, though, and stopped the apprentices before they sat. "Wait, don't sit there," she said. "Why not?" Tangerina said. "Because we're not safe here," Lucy said. "It's obviously a trap." "Lucy, you're just being paranoid," Tangerina said. "This is the most decent part of the woods we've seen." "Exactly," Lucy said. "It's charming. Too charming. We'll be much safer if we keep walking and find some place gloomy and uninviting." "Great. We'll meet you there," Tangerina said. "But if I don't sit for 5 minutes, my feet are going to fall off my swoosh like a giant mouse trap." As soon as Tangerina and Skyline touched the stone bench, an enormous net fell on top of them. The girls screamed and struggled to free themselves. But the more they squirmed, the more entangled they became. Bristol, Lucy, Xanthus, and Emeralda ran up to help their friends, but the net was so thick they couldn't get it off the girls. The classmates heard the sound of a horn coming from nearby. Suddenly, a tribe of strange creatures jumped out from behind the trees, and soon the children found themselves surrounded by over 100 trolls. The trolls were short creatures with dirty orange skin and hairy bodies. They had big eyes, big noses, big feet, big teeth, and tiny horns. They wore clothing made from the fur of foxes, raccoons, and squirrels, and jewelry made for the bones of their prey. Each troll carried a heavy club, and they swung their weapons through the air to incite fear. A particularly large troll, wearing a headdress of exotic feathers, stepped forward to observe the children, and Bristol assumed he was the chief of the tribe. "Everyone remain calm," Lucy whispered to her frightened classmates. "Trolls are incredibly stupid creatures. They've got sight like eyeless skunks and hearing like earless rabbits. If we stay still and silent, they won't even know we're here." The students and apprentices followed Lucy's advice and stood as still as possible. "Actually, our vision is perfect and our hearing is flawless," the chief growled. "Dang it," Lucy muttered. "I was thinking of gophers." "You won't need to think where you're going," the chief said, and he turned to his tribe. "What shall we do with our prisoners? Have we captured slaves or snacks?" The trolls clanked their clubs in celebration of catching the children, and then roared their opinions on whether to eat or enslave them. "Gosh, why isn't there a third option?" Xanthus cried. "Bristol, what do we do?" Emeralda asked. I'm thinking, Bristol said. The tribe was so loud, Bristol could barely hear her own thoughts. The trolls eventually voted for slavery and then crept closer to seize the children. "Okay, I'm going to count to 3, Bristol told her classmates. "On 3, I'm going to wave my wand and cause a distraction. We're going to grab the net and then run out of the clearing. Got it?" "I don't want to be dragged out of here," Skyline said. 1, Bristol started. 2. Before she could give the final signal, the ground rumbled beneath their feet. The trolls looked down in fear and started backing out of the clearing. Great job, Bristol, Lucy said. This is one heck of a distraction. It's not me, Bristol said. I haven't done anything yet. Suddenly, hundreds of green hands with sharp fingernails burst out of the dirt. A colony of goblins crawled out from underground and emerged into the clearing. The goblins were tall and lean creatures with glossy green skin. They had big pointed ears, small jagged teeth, and nostrils without noses. Their Their clothes were made from skins of bats, moles, and reptiles. All the goblins carried sharp spears, and they jabbed the weapons in the troll's direction. An older goblin, wearing a sash made from dead centipedes, confronted the troll chief face to face. How dare you poach on our territory? The goblin elder yelled. This is our territory, the troll chief yelled back. Everything above the ground belongs to us, so go back to the holes you crawled out of. The chief swung his club at the elder, but the goblin blocked it with his spear. You've already stolen our food, our water, and our land, the elder shouted. We will not let you take slaves from us too. Leave the forest immediately or face the consequences. Trolls don't cower from anything, especially goblin filth, the chief declared. Tension between the leaders escalated, and the classmates worried they were about to be caught in the middle of a full-fledged battle between the species. Don't worry, I'll handle this, Lucy whispered to her friends. Please don't, Tangerina pleaded. To her classmates' terror, Lucy strutted across the clearing and placed herself between the troll chief and the goblin elder. Whoa, she said. Fellas, chill out before we all get hurt. The interruption infuriated both leaders. Who do you think you are? The troll chief growled. You don't recognize me? Lucy asked. I'm Lucy Gousset of the world-renowned Gousset troupe. I'm sure you've been to one of our shows. Me and my family have performed for trolls and goblins all over the in-between. We're kind of a big deal around here. The goblin elder squinted at her and rubbed his chin. Oh yes, he said, I remember you. You're that little fat girl who hit the obnoxious box of chimes until I had a splitting headache. It's called the tambourine, Lucy corrected him. Look, I understand things are tough between you guys, and you don't want to make things worse by embarrassing yourselves in front of a celebrity like me. I normally don't do this, but if you let me and my friends leave the clearing in peace, I promise to come back and give you all a free performance. Come on, what do you say? There isn't a conflict in the world that can't be solved with some good old-fashioned entertainment. The students and apprentices cringed at Lucy's attempt to negotiate. The goblin elder turned back to the troll chief and made an offer of his own. Tell you what, the goblin said. You can have the tambourine player, but we're taking the others. No, the chief yelled. You can have the tambourine player, and we'll take the others. The chief blew a horn in the elder's face, and a brutal battle between the trolls and goblins began. Bristol and her classmates watched the brawl in horror. They had never seen such violence in their lives. The creature ruthlessly bludgeoned and stabbed one another. And when their weapons gave out, they resorted to twisting noses and pulling ears. Bristol was just as heartbroken as she was disturbed. If humankind hadn't expelled the trolls and goblins from their kingdoms, they wouldn't have to be fighting over resources like this. However, Bristol was glad the goblins had arrived when they did. They were the best distraction she could have asked for. Now, she yelled to her classmates. Bristol, Esmeralda, and Xanthus grabbed the net and charged out of the clearing, dragging Tangerina and Skylene behind them. Lucy led the charge, pushing the trolls and goblins out of their way. Initially, the creatures were too busy fighting one another to notice, but they quickly spotted the children fleeing the area. "The slaves are getting away!" the troll chief bellowed. "After them!" the goblin elder commanded. The trolls and goblins chased after the classmates, and the sparing creatures moved through the in-between as a united force. The students and apprentices ran through the forest as fast as their tired legs could carry them. Using their magic to prevent the creatures from getting too close, Bristol waved her wand and sent the trolls whirling around in the air in giant bubbles. Emeralda threw handfuls of rubies and diamonds on the ground to make the goblins slip. Xanthus removed his Muner medal and lit entire trees on fire to scare them off. Despite all their magical efforts, the trolls and goblins never paused their pursuit. Lucy was running in front of her classmates and spotted something alarming in the distance ahead of them. "Hey guys," she called over her shoulder, "we're heading toward the cliff of a canyon." "Then do something so we're not heading toward the cliff of a canyon," Emeralda said. Just as they reached the edge of the deep and rocky canyon, Lucy snapped her fingers and a rickety rope bridge with wooden panels appeared in front of them. The classmates ran across the bridge and it started to sway like a giant swing. The movement caused Xanthus to trip and he fell flat on his face. His Muner medal slipped out from his hand and fell into the canyon below. The boy instantly started to panic and he was engulfed in flames. No, he gasped. "Xanthus, listen to me," Bristol said. You have to calm down. If you get too heated, this bridge is going to..." It was too late. Xanthus's fire burned through the ropes and wooden panels. The bridge snapped in half, and the classmates fell into the canyon. The students and apprentices screamed as they dropped through the air and plummeted toward the rocky earth below. The fall reminded Bristol of the final chapter in the Tales of Tidbit Twitch, but unlike the main character's fall, there wasn't a river to break hers. Bristol tried to manifest something soft for the others to land on, but as she waved her wand, the velocity knocked it out of her hand. Bristol desperately reached for her wand in mid-air. It was falling right beside her, just a few inches out of reach. She stretched her arm out as far as possible. Her fingertips grazed the side of it. She wrapped her hand around its crystal handle. Poof! The children hit the bottom of the canyon, and a cloud of dust rose into the air. As the trolls and goblins looked over the cliff, they didn't wait for the dust to clear before retreating back into the woods. Nothing could have survived that fall. Okay, that's nice. Cliffhanger. Got left off on a cliffhanger. But like sleeping stuff was like a bit of a mouthful. I'm thinking about like making different voices for the characters, like high, low, in the middle, British, like I don't know. So thanks for watching A Tale of Magic chapter 17. That was so good. Okay, like that was such a good chapter. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications, maybe, and share to your friends for more videos. Do it. Do it. Do it. Bye.